In our last video, we learned about if-else statements, but what if we want to repeat an action multiple times? That's where loops come in. Today, we are starting with the while loop in Python. So let's dive in. Imagine you have to write the count from 1 to 5. So you could write this, for example, print 1, then again print 2, 3, 4, then 5. Now if you run the code, it prints 1 to 5. But what if we need to count to 100? Writing 100 print statements would take forever. That's where loops come in. With loops, we can do a task in a repetitive manner. A while loop allows us to repeat an action until a condition is false. So instead of these 5 print statements, what we can do is we can write a while loop. So to write a while loop, you just have to write while. Then similar to if-else statements, we can give here a condition. So a condition, then write colon, then you'll get a block, means the while loop block. There you can write some code to be executed. As long as this condition is true, the loop keeps running. Once the condition becomes false, the loop stops. So let me give you an example. Let's say we have a variable called count equal 1. Then I'm gonna write the while keyword, and in the condition part, I'll check if count is less than or equal 5. So if this condition is true, go inside the while block and print the count. And after printing, we want to increment that. So I'm gonna write count plus equal 1. So now if you run the code, you'll see it prints exactly the same thing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you write here 6 and run the code, you can see it prints to 6. So what is happening here is we have a variable which is count, which holds the value 1. So when Python comes to this condition, it checks if count, which is 1, is less than or equal to 6. So as this is true, it goes inside this block and prints count. At this moment, count is 1. So it prints 1. After printing 1, it goes to the next line, and what it does is it adds 1 to previous value. Previously, count equal was 1, but when it comes to this line, count becomes 2. So when it becomes 2, it again goes to the condition. Now the count holds the value 2. So 2 is also less than 6. That means count less than equal 6. This condition is true. So again, it enters to this block and prints the count. Now count is 2. After printing 2, it goes to the next line, and what it does is it adds 1 to the previous value. So the previous value was 2. After adding 1, this becomes 3. So after count becomes 3, it goes to the condition again. 3 is also less than 6. That means this condition is again true. So it enters the while block and prints 3. After printing 3, it adds 1 to count variable and it becomes 4. Then it again goes to this condition, and 4 is less than 6. That means again it is true. So it prints 4 in this line, and after printing 4, it adds 1 to 4, which is stored in count now. Then it becomes 5. After it becomes 5, it again goes to the condition. 5 is also less than 6. That means the condition is true again. So again it enters the while block and prints 5 here. After that, we increment count with 1 and this becomes 6. Again it goes. So count equals 6. Again this statement is true. So now it prints 6, and in this line, after adding 1 to 6, it becomes 7. And now when it goes to the condition again, it says that count now holds the value 7, and 7 is neither less nor equal to 6. So that's when it discontinues the process. So it does not print 7, it only prints 6. As you can see, it prints 6. But after the while loop, count variable holds the value 7. So after Python exits the loop, if you print count and run the code, you will see it prints 7, because while the value of count was 6, it entered in the block and printed 6 and made count 7, but it did not printed 7. But the variable holds the value 7. So after the while block, if you print the variable, it will print this value. Otherwise, it won't. Now let's take an interesting example by using while loops with user input to make interactive programs. For example, let's say we have a variable called password. There we have an empty string. Then we can write the while loop, and for the condition, we want to check if password is not equal to Python 123, then we want to ask user for input. So we're gonna write password equal and call the input function, and for placeholder we're gonna write enter the password. So if user gives password which does not matches this one, the program will repeatedly ask for the password. But if user gives this value as password, then we want to exit the while loop and print that access granted. So now if I run the code, you can see Python is asking for a password. So if I write here Adil, then hit enter, you can see again it asks for a new password. So if I write here Naruto, hit enter, it does not give us access. If I write here Hinata, hit enter, it again asks for the password. Now if you write Python 123, then hit enter, you can see it prints access granted and exits the program. So how cool is that? So the key point here is the loop keeps asking for the password until the user enters Python 123. Now let's talk about some common mistakes while working with loops. So always be careful and cautious when you work with loops. If you forget to change the loop condition, your loop may run forever, freezing your program. So what do I mean by that? So let me clear this code and have another variable called num equal 1, and let me write the while part, the while keyword actually, and let me check if num less than 5. If this condition is true, we want to print num. Now if you don't write here num plus equal 1 or num equal num plus 1, if you don't write this line, this loop will become an infinite loop. That is because you are not changing the value of num. So num always stays 1, and whenever the while loop runs, 1 is always gonna be less than 5. So this will lead to an infinite loop and freeze your program. So let me run the code to show you. As you can see, it continuously printing 1 1 1 1 1. So there is no stops for this process until you click on this icon manually. So here what is happening is the num variable holds the value 1. So first time when while loop sees this condition 1 is less than 5, it goes to the print statement and print num, which is 1, and after executing the block, as we didn't write this part, after executing the print statement, it goes to the condition again, and as we haven't updated the num is still 1. So 1 is again less than 5. So again while loop enters this block and prints 1. Then again from this line again goes to the condition 1 is again less than 5, enters the block and prints 1. We haven't updated num, still it holds 1. Again it goes to the condition less than 5. Again it enters the block and prints 1. So this is a never-ending process. So to fix that, make sure to always update the dependency variable. In this case it is num. So you have to write num plus equal 1. Now if you run the code, you'll see it prints 1 to 4 because we are saying as long as num is less than 5, we want to print num. When num becomes 5, we don't want to print that. But if you write here num less equal 5, means if num is less or equal to 5, then it will print 1 to 5. Now let me remove this code and let's see the use case of the break statement. So the break statement. So break is used when we want to stop the loop manually. When a certain condition is met, we can use the break statement. So let's take a new example. Let's say we have a variable called count where it holds the value 1 and we want to write a while loop and check if count is less than or equal 10. Then we want to print count, and after printing we have to increment the count. So count plus equal 1. So if you run the code, it will print 1 to 10. As you can see, it prints 1 to 10. But let's say you want, when the count becomes 5, you want to stop the loop manually. In real world applications, you will face this kind of scenarios where you want to stop the loop manually. So let's say in our case, we want to stop the loop when the value becomes 5. So what we can do is, we can write here, if count equal 5, we want to check if count is 5, and if this becomes true, then we want to print that stopping loop at 5. Then we can just write the break statement. So even though we have written here that if count is less than 10, print count, but if you run the code, you will see it prints 1, 2, 3, 4 and then prints stopping loop at 5. So here what is happening is, count is having the value 1. So in the while condition, initially when Python checks and found count which is 1 is less than 10, this becomes true. Then it goes inside the while block and there it sees another condition, which is if count is equal 5. So as now initially count has the value 1, this becomes false. So Python does not goes inside this block. Instead of that, prints 1. After printing 1, it increments 1 in the count. So here it becomes 2. In the previous line, it was 1. After that, after incrementing the count value, it goes to the condition again. So now count has the value 2, and 2 is also less than 10. So it goes inside this logic and found this condition. So count is 2, which is not equal 5. So it does not go inside this block, comes to this one and prints 2. And in this line, it increments the value and makes 3. After making this 3, again it goes to the condition, founds this is true, means 3 less than 10, goes inside the while loop block, but 3 is not equal 5. That's why it does not go inside the if block, but it comes to this statement and prints 3. Then for that line, count becomes 4 after incrementing with 1. Again it goes to the while condition. Again 4 is less than 10. This is true. It goes to the while block. There 4 is not equal 5. So it does not goes inside this block. Prints 4, increments and makes count 5. And again it goes to the while condition and checks if 5 is less than or equal 10. So as 5 is less than 10, it becomes true. So this one is true. So it goes to the while block and checks this logic. If count is equal 5, means now count holds 5. So count is equal 5. This is true. So it enters the if block and prints stopping loop at 5. And after printing this line, it goes to the next line and it founds that we are telling Python to break the loop. So after seeing the break statement, it exits the while loop. So it does not check the while condition further. It just breaks that, means exits the loop. So as you can see, it prints 1, 2, 3, 4. Then it prints stopping loop at 5. Now, sometimes we don't want to stop the loop but skip a certain iteration. That's where the continue comes in. So let me remove this portion. Let me remove this part and make the comment to continue statement, or let me remove the whole code actually and write the count variable again with the value 0, and then I will write the while keyword and check if count is less than 5. If the condition is true, then we want to do count plus equal 1. So while working with continue, it is always a good idea to write the increment before our execution code. Then you can write if count is equal 3, then we want to continue, and then let's write the print statement and just write count. Now if you run the code, you'll see it prints 1, 2, then it does not print 3. Instead of that, it prints 4 and 5. So here what is happening is we have a variable called count equals 0. So this condition is true because it is less than 5. So it will go inside this while loop, and there it will increment that with 1. So now count holds the value 1, and that is not equal 3. So it won't execute this part, and it will go to the outer if block and print the count, which is 1 now. After printing 1, it will go to the condition again, and 1 is less than 5. It will go inside and make that 2. So 2 is not equal to 3, so it won't execute this part, but it will print 2. After that, it will go back to the condition and check if 2 is less than 5. Again, it will find that 2 is less than 5. That statement is true, and it will go inside the while block and it will increment the count and will make that 3. So now this if statement is true because count holds the value 3, which matches this value. So what it will do is it will enter to the if block and it will see that we are saying continue. Continue means stop the while loop for current iteration. Means after continue in while loop, if there is any code, skip that and go to the condition again. Okay, so now count is 3. It goes there and finds we have continue, so it does not go to the other part of code in the while block. It goes to the condition and finds that 3 is less than 5. It is true. Again it goes inside the while block and makes the count 4 in this line. Then 4 is not equal 3, so it skips this part and prints 4. As you can see, 4. Then it does this process again and prints 5. So we are skipping the iteration where count becomes 3. So I hope you understood the use case of continue. Whenever we want to stop a certain iteration of a loop instead of the full loop, then we use the continue statement instead of the break statement. And if we talk about the common mistakes in while loops, those are if you do not use the indentation properly, this will yell at us. So make sure to always indent your code, and while checking, make sure to use double equal because it is the comparison operator. If you use single equal, this becomes the assignment operator and it will throw error. And make sure to increment a dependency variable, otherwise it will become an infinite loop and your program will just freeze. So I hope you understood the while loop and its use cases. So that's all for now. See you in the next one.